Room now, Chris?
Some of the attendees are, yeah, it's starting to populate here. Yes.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Thank you all for coming today. I don't know where you are, but it's been raining like crazy here, and we hit an all-new record high yesterday of 103 degrees. So I don't know where I'm moving to next, but I'm leaving here. So
That sounds rough.
yeah, it's bad. And living in air conditioning all the time is not a good idea. All
For
right,
sure.
well, let's get started, Chris. So hello and welcome everyone to FGDLA's Government Learning and Technology Symposium Series. I'm Carla Lane. I'm FGDLA's Vice President for the Higher Education Sector. I'm here today alongside Chris Patak, who is with HP and Chair of the FGDLA Communications Committee. FGDLA is a nonprofit professional association formed to promote the development and the application of distance learning in the federal government. We actively foster collaboration and understanding among those involved in leveraging technology and instructional media in support of the education and instructional training needs of the federal government. We invite you to join with us in this exciting field. You'll find membership forms at fgdla.us. For our upcoming events on July 17th, Dr. Anders Gronstedt will lead a webinar with the Navy about VR training for Navy submariners. On August 14th, Tara Schendel of DLI will present on the DoD and responsible AI. Ellen Finkelstein will present on using Copilot with PowerPoint. The date is September 18th. And Dr. Jenny Vericchio will present a 2-hour workshop on gamified learning design using generative AI. This is part 2 in this series, and the session will carry FGDLA certification. The FGDLA awards will be presented on December 4th, so watch for the entry form. That'll be coming out soon. So we hope you will join us for all of these special events, and we've got a few more that we're working on. We'll be adding those as well. We're so proud that Zoom and Moodle have become such valued sponsors for FGDLA. They've been instrumental in helping us present the webinars, and we're so pleased to announce that COSO Cloud has become a new sponsor for FGDLA. COSO Cloud is a class technologies company and a leading provider of secure and customized e-learning solutions for the government and enterprise sector. Joining forces with the COSO Cloud will enable FGDLA to continue to offer comprehensive and future-focused learning solutions to meet the training needs of the federal government. We are so honored to have such wonderful sponsors that are giants in the industry. Thank you. We think you all are just great. The topic for today is creating a virtual learning environment through the lessons learned from the U.S. Marine Corps. Dr. Erika Jacobs and Daniel Mozer will be your guides for the session. Erika is the FGDLA president, and she holds a PhD in instructional design for online learning. She is the Deputy Director and Capability Support Branch Head of the Educational Technology Department at Marine Corps University. Daniel is the Collaborative Specialist at Involve Media. Daniel has over a decade of experience in web conferencing and digital learning. With us today is an exceptional panel here for the session led by Charlie Schoenberger, who is the Senior Director of Adobe Learning. Paul Gilbertson is the Senior Solutions Consultant at Adobe, and Rob Porter is Head of Market and Business Development at COSO Cloud eLearning Solutions. And now, Erika and Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and get to share a little bit what I do in my work. And I'm excited to present with Daniel again. We've presented before, and so we work really closely together because Involve Media supports us in developing training, training our trainers, training our educators on how to use our tools, so Adobe Connect. So our agenda, what we're going to be talking about, is a little bit of a background of how we got to talking about our developing our virtual learning environments, a problem that we had run into, the solution, and then the process that we went through to get to that solution, and then the final outcome. All right, so we're going to go back to February of 2020. And it was perfect timing. The Marine Corps decided we want to start setting up virtual learning environments within our MarineNet e-learning ecosystem. And several years back, I co-presented with our Director of Educational Technology, and we shared about the MarineNet e-learning ecosystem. And it's a combination of a bunch of different tools coming together for education. And we were ready to step it up with virtual learning. So we adopted Adobe Connect, and it was just in time because in March, COVID, the pandemic hit. And what this allowed us to do was reach out to those Marines who, had restriction of movement, but still needed education. PME couldn't stop. It had to continue. So it forced our seminars to go virtual. It's unfortunate because it was a force, it would have been nice to unroll it nicely. Because prior to that, we were used to doing face-to-face. We were used to doing completely asynchronous within our LMS. But we had the tool. So we were ready to move forward. Synchronous virtual sessions did allow us to reach more Marines on a broader base. We have Marines around the world, and it allowed us to go into these remote places. So they might have been in the same time zone, but they didn't have the ability to travel, and they didn't necessarily want to do the strict online learning. They wanted some more interaction, right? And this also supported the funding cutbacks that were coming, right? Because travel costs money, sending Marines to school costs money, but if we can get them all online at a time, this is a great way to reach them. But there was a problem. Our virtual synchronous courses were growing. Anytime you adopt a new product, it takes time to train and, train the instructors. And we needed to make sure that our virtual instructors were ready to take on, they couldn't just flip from what was being taught face to face. I mean, there's a lot of similar stuff you can do, but they had to be taught. They needed some, they needed some guidance in there. It really wasn't in our scope or in the budget to be able to train hundreds, because we have hundreds of adjunct faculty, on how to use this wonderful tool that we had procured at the perfect time. So we have this tool. We have the ability to reach, we have the need, but we needed to be able to reach the students in a student-centered, student-friendly way, because you could put things up on a screen and it's not necessarily going to be a great and engaging course. And then that could make for a very long PME experience, not very good. All right, so our solution was we turned to using Adobe Connect templates. So I'm going to talk about templates, and these are specific to Adobe Connect. But inside those templates, we're going to talk about the use of features and functions. And if any of the panelists want to tie or jump in here, or Dan, if you want to too, not just sticking with templates, but the ability to pull in and make interactive courses. What are we looking for? We want to pull on our instructional designers and those who are familiar with virtually designing courses, and connect with our course directors who, are the SMEs, the subject matter experts, to make sure we're hitting all those avenues. And then just making sure that our layouts covered all the necessary content. And then the nice thing is the templates allowed us to have them preloaded, so it didn't take time away from the instructor. So that's how we turn to templates. And I'm going to, inside Adobe Connect, I guess. So we have the ability to select a template. We have numerous templates in there. And then this allowed an instructor who has host permissions to go in there, grab a template for whatever course they're teaching, and their content is there. And then the course directors, if they ever needed to update that content, they just go into that template, fix it, and then the next time a course is created off that template, that new content is already there. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan, so he can talk to you a little bit more specifically about
of course. That. Yeah, I was going to say, I know we have Charlie and Paul on here, but I don't know if they turned on their cameras yet. And I know that they were looking good. Well, Charlie turned his camera on. Look at him. Charlie always looks good. And we're waiting on Paul to turn on his camera as well. So I want to reiterate Erika's point, because it brings up a good aspect of some of the hurdles that we have to go through when switching to a new platform, or just kind of embracing online learning, because you have two distinct groups of people. You have people that are really good as instructors and good presenters, and then you have good instructional designers. And sometimes those are people that overlap, but sometimes they're two independent groups of people. Where this comes into play is that you have the ability using templates to give the tools for the people that are building the trainings the access to build those trainings. And then what you're also doing is you're giving those people that are really good at presenting a simple button that they click that gives them their entire course. And like Erika said, with a simple few button clicks, some adjustments, any updates that need to happen to that course moving forward can be updated and then applied universally, because that's going to change that template and any future template based off of that. So it makes it super great. I like to show this side first before I show you templates, because I want to show you what the power of templates are. I can show you a list, but sometimes looking at the list, you don't really get the context behind it. So I'm looking at one of my virtual rooms here. Now, with the Adobe Connect platform that the Marines use, it's very flexible because you have something known as layouts. I'll put double air quotes over here. On the far right side, you're going to see a couple boxes. They're labeled lobby, presentation, camera, Q&A. What those are their different configurations of this virtual classroom that I can quickly jump between. Because again, the big component here is you want to create things that are engaging and exciting for your users. So having this ability to kind of jump in between these interactions with a simple button click where everything changes up, you can load in some questions, and we'll get more into this in a little bit. This is where you create that engagement. But to do this legwork takes a little bit of time, and you also have to have some technical know-how to do this. Now, if you're someone who likes presenting and that's where you draw the line, you might not want to spend the time building this. And that's where those instructional designers and those template editors come into place. Because now, if we switch gears here, let me bring back up the system. What you're going to notice is this is the backend portal of Adobe Connect. And this is where everyone who's managing, maintaining the system kind of operates everything in. Now, if I go to meetings here, I have a couple meetings, but I want to create a new meeting because I want to show you how easy it is to use templates in this situation. So I'll kind of give it some basic information. I'll give the room a name. I'll give the room some additional information here. We'll just do it really quickly. Adobe Connect 2025. Let's prepare for it. And we'll go AC 2025. So what you'll see right here is there's an option to select template. Now, if I click this dropdown, I have a bunch of templates that I can pick from. And you don't have to limit it to just one template. This is also where a lot of that flexibility comes into play, because you can build a template per each subject, per each instructor, per year over year that you're going to be doing this. Now, the special case that we like to bring up here, and this kind of goes into what the Marines have on their system, is the CUI template. If they are going to be having any meetings with CUI, this is something that they'll be able to select, and it bakes in all of that information for them. So
I'm going to add, if anybody doesn't know what CUI is, it's controlled unclassified information. So not classified, but it's controlled, meaning you have to control who has the ability to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you, Erika. You keep me honest in these calls, and I always
you get caught up in the acronyms too. I know.
I know. Well, the world nowadays has too many acronyms, but it helps when we know it.
Dan, while you're stopped here for a minute, Leah has a question. She wants to know, are the templates created by you or somebody else, or how do you come by those?
So the unique feature of that is that it can be created by anyone. So I have my own independent account, and I can create templates that only I can access. But actually, the best way to show you this, let me click this drop down again. So you'll see that some here at the bottom say my templates. So those will be the only ones that show up on my account. But above that, you're going to see shared templates. This is created in a shared area, so anyone that has an account can click on this and access it. Essentially, two different areas that you're able to create them, but you yourself can create your own templates if you'd like to, and you can also share them. So if you create a personal template that people love, you can move that over to the shared area so everyone can access it.
And on the Marine side, from a Marine point of view, in our system, we control who has the hosting permissions. There's special training that they have to go through, which Dan also helps train our trainers. So it's not just open to anybody in our system. Our system is a closed system. You have to authenticate in or username and password into our entire ecosystem in order to gain access. But they have to have special permissions in order to create and even have access to then create the template. So,
No, and I know we're Erica, we've done this so much. We know what
I
we're gonna do. We know what we're gonna talk about for like, do we talk about security yet? We'll get into security in a little bit, but
yeah.
so I'll just go ahead. I'll create this. Very quick at the bottom, I'll click finish. Oh, right.
No,
This
you
is
won't.
important. I
Not
know.
yet.
So this is important, especially with this particular template. This option appears, kind of confirming that you know that this is going to be containing CUI. So you do need to type yes in here for this room to be created. It's almost like I planned that. I didn't.
And I want to add to that this is unique to our system. This was created for the Marine Corps because we wanted the ability to, because we are in the IL4 environment, impact level 4 environment through COSO Cloud, so they're hosting us, and we wanted the ability to have CUI material in our environment. So this is our way of identifying if somebody's going to have it, so that the correct display comes identification.
So what you'll see here is when I created that, it gives me a link. This is the link that I share for everyone to access this meeting. We'll talk about security in a little bit. I'll go to my terms of use page. I'll click OK, and this will launch this meeting open for me. Now, because I based it off of that template, what will happen is when this room is generated for me in hopefully a couple seconds here, it's going to base everything in this room off of that template. So I don't have to go through that additional legwork of setting everything up. And I can basically just go in and set up my content. It always does this to me sometimes. So here we go. Just close these. So again, this template has a custom background, basically letting people know this meeting is marked as containing CUI, and gives you some relevant information. And we click over here to these other layouts that I was kind of referring to earlier. You'll notice we have banners across the top and bottom, just making sure that people know that this meeting is going to be containing CUI. So if you're supposed to be there, good. If you're not supposed to be there, that's bad. But that's where I'll throw it back to you, Erica, on the templates. Let me stop sharing here and give you back the PowerPoint.
All right. I will share my PowerPoint again. All right, is that coming through again?
Yes.
All right, great. So our process in deciding what would be contained. Now, this is, I think, where it becomes most important to share with the audience is how do we decide what is going to go in? What is going to make, we're trying to develop effective virtual learning. I know the first thing I want to do is gain attention. I'm not in a classroom where I can stand up in front and like start talking to people and get to know my students. But what I want to do, if I'm talking from a teacher's perspective, I want to engage them right from the start. So we create a lobby and have a chat, have games. There's these inside of Adobe Connect, there's these awesome custom pods that you can grab a whole bunch of different things from. I just found a new one that's my new favorite. It's a jigsaw puzzle, and that's fun because you just throw a picture up there and it splits it apart and you got to put it back together. But just a nice way to engage. There's also a word search you could create, just something to give students to do, encourage them to come into the class early, right? And they can participate and chat while they're playing these things and, just getting to know each other. And I don't know if Rob or Charlie want to jump in. I mean, you've seen these too. I know you guys have led and hosted a lot of stuff, but just that initial gaining people's attention, the value in that.
I'll add to it by all means. I mean, as far as being an instructor and being able to engage people right away, it adds so much more value, right? And we do it as instructors on a regular basis. We'll ask questions, we'll, throw up surveys, who's going to, raise your hand, all sorts of that type of stuff. And, over, you do 50, 75 courses over time, you're like, okay, I need to find something new. And this is a great way to get people engaged in it right away, get people talking. The nice thing from an instructor's perspective is that this is built like you said it, this is within the store. You could just quickly pick it up. This particular one was free, and just start using it. So a lot of the legwork, the hard stuff is already taken care of, and it gives you a lot of flexibility and alternative ways to get your learners engaged.
Yeah.
Well, I'll even say this, like being someone that has trained a lot of adult learners, the one thing that surprised me when I first started doing it is adult learners are exactly like kid learners. Everyone wants to play a game. And as soon as you incorporate something fun into the activity, whether it's kind of just changing how you present, whether you mix up your PowerPoint slides to be something a little bit more interactive, like having those elements that make learning fun. I don't care who you are, regardless. Making learning fun, you're always going to retain more information that way. And having the ability to do this is always great. So I like the concept of the flipped classroom, but sorry, go ahead, Erica.
Oh, and I was going to say too, just I think adding a game in the beginning or something engaging in the lobby before it starts the energy right. I want my students coming in to be excited and want to be there and maybe look forward to what's the next thing I'm going to throw up there.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is just an example of what we had. Here's another one. And I think there was something you were going to add on this one, possibly. We talked about countdown timers, just to keep track, so when we start class on time, you can see in this one, there's a lot of preloaded material. So there's files that can be downloaded. Does my mouse carry over? Do you see that?
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
So the files that can be downloaded right here. This is really just a presentation. You'll see that there's a camera spot where webcam can be shared, but it's rather small, so it's not taking away from and distracting. There's ability to chat, and then you see who's in there, and then notes. And these notes can get added ahead of time again, so that class instruction of what's happening for the day is there. So that this was just another example. This was a video, right? Actually, I'm looking at it was a video presentation.
Erica, are most of your courses synchronous or asynchronous, or is it mixed or what?
So these would be synchronous, the ones that are designed here. The courses overall are taught in 3 different ways. So they are still taught face-to-face, and they are taught completely asynchronous with Moodle. And then there's also sessions that are taught synchronously through virtual learning using this.
Would you have the same course being offered in 3 different ways?
Yes, it is. And the student or their command chooses which one is best for that student in the way that they learn or prefer to learn, or their timing even. So obviously the virtual requires them to meet at a particular time. The face-to-face requires them to meet at a particular time. There's a set date and time for their seminars. Where the asynchronous, typically asynchronous, you get on when you can and complete the stuff by the deadline.
So do you only have one version of the course and you bring in instructors and they use that version, or does each instructor create their own version
Of these virtual learning?
of any,
So
each
yes,
group?
we have course. Yeah, that's a good point. We have course directors that develop the course with the curriculum. It's all pre-developed. So our adjunct faculty are really just the people standing in the class, standing in front of the class, standing or behind the screen. They are just teaching the material. So we have an intense faculty development course that teaches them how to teach, but the content is pre-developed, which is why this template works so well for us, because our course directors, our SMEs, are the ones who are saying, this is what has to be covered because it's PME and it has to meet these requirements. So everybody has, and we want everybody to have that same material. That's why this was so important to have this, because now we can ensure that material that they're supposed to be covering is included. It's the content that's in the layouts.
Regardless of what the delivery method is.
Correct. Yeah. So if they're teaching asynchronously in Moodle, the content is there. If they're teaching face-to-face, they're referencing the content that's in Moodle. Same thing, they're referencing it here, but when it's presented as it would be presented face-to-face, if there's a PowerPoint they're supposed to be talking about or engaging with, or a hands-on activity, which I think it's coming up. There's a hands-on activity, they still get to do it virtually. It's just going to look a little, and you interact a little differently.
Okay.
And I think this one, Dan, you had mentioned something on this one.
So
engaging.
The thing that I like bringing up here is that, especially with doing things virtually, is you want to create that mirrored experience to the classroom. So you want to have a tool that has the same tangible assets. So the ability to not only just view the content, but interact with the content. So a great way that we do this as instructors is through the use of polling questions. Again, everyone calls them something different. You can call them like survey questions. What I'm just so used to calling them polling questions. But this is a great way to get a temperature check from your audience, because essentially what you're able to do is you're able to throw out a question. Now, again, right here, we have 3 up on the screen. You don't have to do that format. You could literally just pop one up over top of a PowerPoint as you're presenting, and you can say, all right, I just went over that slide. What was your takeaway from that slide? And using that, you're also engaging with your audience, because then you're getting instant feedback. So when those polls come in, you actually have the ability in the top left, you'll actually see there's a little view vote button on each of those. And what it does is it actually shows me a list of all of my students in the classroom and what they said, but also the students that didn't say anything. So if you do want to know who's not actively engaging over the course period of time, you're going to know who those people are using polling questions throughout your session. But what I like about it as an instructor is it offers me the ability to take something that is a one-to-many situation, and I can make it feel more personalized, because now that I see how people are responding to things, I can use that as follow-ups to that particular question. I can say, oh, I see that Erika said this. Erika, what were your points there? And I can see that Chris said this. So it is a way where I can start using people's names in my classroom. And this is all going to vary depending on the size of the class that you have, because some people, you've got a class of 15 people, but some of you, especially with virtual tools nowadays, might be training 60 to 100 people simultaneously. And with that, when you have so many people that you have to talk to, you do want to create that experience where it feels like you are giving everyone that personalized time and attention. And I find polling questions are great because it's a way where you can interact with them, but it's also a way to see and interact back with them using that information that they're providing you.
Yeah, and I saw Paul, did you comment on this with knowledge checks? Yeah.
Yeah, knowledge checks, there are all kinds of different names for them. And the
Mhm.
other thing about this is when you're not in person, so the students aren't in front of their peers, you can raise the bar and ask tougher questions and have them fail, which then also brings up interest, or gets them to lean in, because no one wants to fail, but they fail without anyone else seeing it other than maybe the instructor. And now that really draws people into realizing, I don't understand this content, or I wasn't listening.
That's a good point. That's a good one,
Yeah,
Paul.
that actually gets even further than what we typically see in a classroom experience, right? Because classroom experiences are very public, right? And to Paul's point, you could actually have a bit more pointed direction for individuals without calling them out, right? Without making them feel bad, without anything else. And ultimately, I mean, as instructors, our goal is to make sure that the people that walk out the door, have the information that they need, and that's it. And to whatever degree, and as well as utilizing the techniques that the platform has to offer, can actually help get you beyond even a typical classroom experience.
Yeah, I would agree. Yep.
Yeah. And real quick too, just kind of going back, and Eric, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot with a quick question. And to me, and follow up on Daniel's comments too, in regards to templating, right? And I kind of just want to get that, because as an instructor, that is probably the most valuable asset that I could think of, having. And the really the big points for me are the ability to replicate without a huge amount of effort, right?
Yeah.
I can rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And to Carla's question in regards to multiple courses ongoing and so forth, if I'm doing 25 courses a year, 50 courses a year, not being, I think in a classroom, if I was in a physical classroom, I'd have to go back and reset the chairs and erase the whiteboard and change the flip chart and do all these other things. Whereas in this environment, I just click template and I'm done. Right. So for the question for you, and I'm getting to that, is that can you, as someone with firsthand experience, provide some feedback from a logistics perspective on the value of having templates in your operation, managing that many different instructors? Where do you see that come into play as a big value for you?
Oh, it's absolutely huge, because like I said, there's one course director, right, for the course, And, there's several SMEs that work inside that course. And we don't have the time to sit and train the adjunct faculty. They're trained on the content. So could you imagine spending the time? There's so many great tools and so many great things to engage our students in learning. How do you train them? And then they each would have to, could you imagine the time that each of them would take? Everybody's could look different, but each of them pulling these different tools in to use. I'm just thinking we don't pay them for that. Like, that's not what our adjunct faculty get paid for. So the logistical piece, it wouldn't happen. Do you know what it would end up being is come to class and I'll put up a set of slides for you.
Right.
Who wants
For
to
sure.
learn that way? I don't want to learn that way. We don't want to learn that way in a classroom even. We want to have it engaging. So if this is all prepared ahead of time, we've got these polls pre-made, but you don't have to. Like, that's like one of my ending points at the end is we've got all these templates and we created this, but we're not stuck to them either. If there is that instructor who finds the time or has this cool activity that he or she wants to add, they can still do that. And I think that's a huge thing.
Let me add on to that,
But the
Eric.
adaptability as well. I mean, I think that's something too, is someone who's managed multiple instructors in the past. I find that, different instructors come to the table with different skill sets, different, things to get people's attention. We talked about, some of the pods that you could utilize and things like that, different techniques. And I always find, just kind of a recap as we go through and like, which instructor does this aspect really, really well? And what pieces do we want to replicate? And then to Daniel's point about creating another template, like you have the capability of pulling the best from all these different instructors and kind of aggregating that together and then moving that into its own template, moving forward. That seems to me, huge. Operationally, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But it's the consistency for the student. We're always talking about user friendly. So if you've got consistency for the student, when they go from class to class to class, a lot of the same tools, things are in the same place so that they're not constantly feeling like they're in an entirely different learning environment, which is aggravating to no end. That also impacts the teacher because you're constantly saying, well, click here, do this. Here, let me send you a screenshot.
Right.
And that's wasted teaching time.
Absolutely.
You have to think about it on both sides. It's easier and it's better administratively, but how does it really roll down the hill to the learners? Because if they don't learn something because the environment is too stupid, then, then what do? You've got nothing. And that's the real problem. And particularly for the Marines, I would, as a citizen, I would go,
Yeah, don't waste the time on that. Yeah, right.
For sure. And Carla, I mean, also to your point too, I mean, that also kind of plays into somewhat of the neuroplasticity aspect of it as well. Like if we remove obstacles out of the way, if everything changes every time someone comes into a course, they're spending more time looking at, okay, this was here, now it's there. This is in this platform, it was over here, and they're spending valuable time and thought in regards to focusing on the structure and not the content. So from looking at from a neuroplasticity side, as far as helping them retain the information moving forward, if I can remove a lot of those obstacles and enable the instructors to really focus on the content, I'm teed up to be more successful at the end.
Right, because if you're spending all your time learning how Adobe Connect works or how Moodle works or how, something else works, because we're all using different things, then, I've taught at the same time in 3 different learning environments, and it gets a little on the confusing side, but, if you're in it all day, a lot, it doesn't matter. But if you're a student coming in and you're only doing things on a spasmodic sort of basis, then you spend an awful lot of time trying to figure out where's the content, what am I supposed to do, where's the discussion, who's leading this, who's in the class with me, and what am I learning and how quickly can I learn it and get out of this class?
100% agree.
And you can build into the templates some of the things that you're finding that the students are having a hard time figuring out early in the session. This is over here, this is over here, built into an earlier, pages of the templates just to get people, that familiarity.
Yeah, job aids for students.
Yes.
We have job aids for instructors, go here, do this is how you file grades and so forth, which is really useful. But that we could do the same thing for our students. because they come in blind. And if you don't leave them some sort of a path to follow, they spend all their time trying to find the path. That's my entire point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know we emphasize breakouts here, but I want to say we talk about breakouts a little bit later. So I'm going to go back to you, Dan, where you were going to mention about our security, because security is a concern. You know, we're talking about, and I know everybody in the government, anybody in the government learning environment, there are concerns. So how do we make sure that we don't have a random person coming into our meeting room?
This is a very good point. So with security, especially with this platform, it's customizable like everything else that we've been talking about today. And these layers of security that you can add are customizable by you. So I'm going to get a guest possibly.
By you being the adjunct faculty person,
the
right?
adjunct. Sorry, my cat was about to jump on a keyboard, so he didn't, and I was prepared for him to do that. But essentially, we have complete control over how you're going to access this meeting. As you saw when we went through the template earlier, you had to click on a terms of use page, so people are agreeing to what they're coming to into this. But something that we have within the training is, or at least within the trainings that I deliver for the Marines, is that we have a room passcode. So even if I've set the room up to require users to have a username and password, I can still have an additional layer of security, such as a room passcode. So every time I do that training, if you don't know the passcode that I've set for that day's class, you're not able to come in there. As you can see, sorry everyone, he has found me and knows that I'm working.
Did you feed him this morning? That's the question.
You can never feed a cat too much. But again, it's fully customizable in the sense that with these classrooms, I can open it up. If I wanted to do more of a town hall webinar that was public facing, I could set up one of these Adobe Connect rooms to basically be, you click on the link, you type your name, and you're in that room. But I can also set it up to where you have to have an account on our system. You have to have permission to come into this room. You have to be on a set permissions list, and you have to know my room passcode. So whatever layer of security that you want to apply to one of these trainings, you can assure that the people that are coming there, either you want there, you want there, allowed there, or again, you can block them, and also have the layers of security in the room to where if I see someone, I can kick them out of the room, and I can even go through parameters in the session to deny access. So when someone is kicked out of the room, I can switch it to where they have to then go through an approval process to where I have to approve or deny them. And if I don't know who a Paul Gilbertson is, kicking them out. You're not allowed here, Paul. Get out of here. But yeah, go ahead, Erika.
And that's a good thing too, because like sometimes we have, students will have accounts, but we have guest speakers who will join. Guest presenters, right? So it's the ability to be able to control, because you have to manually allow that guest in. That's how our system works, so that we can ensure the right people are in there or have access. So it's we have it so no one could ever from the public just join. If somebody is a guest and doesn't have an account, they have to be manually allowed in. So that's just what we have on our system. And then this is where, here we go, interactivity. So I kind of had that last slide that was up before we switched over to interactivity, or switched over to security. It was actually a breakout session. So in this one, we use it as an icebreaker, but there's several of these interactive breakout sessions where we can choose how many students, or we give suggestions to the faculty of how many students should be in this breakout session, and they're preloaded with all of the content. And I think this is where I was going to turn it over to you, Dan, and I'm going to stop sharing, and you were going to talk a little bit about breakouts and how to get there, and what is.
Of course. Let me share my screen. And I saw that someone has raised their hand for their for a question. So while I'm doing this, I didn't know if we wanted to take.
Sure. Yeah. What's the question?
I don't know whether Jan can come off mute or not, or we have to open her mic, Chris, or Jan, you could just put the question in the chat room.
Yeah, so she's muted, but I gave her permission to ask the question live.
Okay. Jan, are you hearing us?
Putting, putting people on the
Maybe
spot.
not.
Yes, I can hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay, go ahead. What's your question?
I didn't have a question. That's the reason I wasn't talking.
All right, so
Okay.
you've been messing around with the buttons and you raised your hand, so, okay, good, exploratory, that's great.
Hey,
Well,
hey,
okay, so while we're at the spot right now, you've got about 20 minutes left on the clock, Erica.
Okay, great. Thanks.
perfect. So again, great example of interactivity. You want to give students tools to interact with. And again, as we know, when you give them a new system or a system that they're familiar with, they're going to explore it. And you want to give them options to do this. Just going back to Erica's point with lobbies before I get into breakout rooms, it just gives people like a familiarity and a comfort of the room. Because as you were saying, with students coming into a new environment, anytime we learn a new software, we're going somewhere new, there's always that element of, there's always that insecurity where you're not sure what it's going to be like. Setting up a lobby layout where you have interactivity, even simple fun activity. This is a game where you have to help a sheep across a couple posts. But I will say, I've done this in a lot of my lobbies, and it gets very competitive because you can see how other people are scoring in here. It just gives people that hands-on experience to where they're kind of getting that comfort on their own because they're exploring and they're having fun. And with that comes that comfort that's going to go into that classroom. But to Erica's point and to what she was showing on the PowerPoints is breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are incredible because what you're essentially doing is you're making the students the instructor. You're giving them an activity to work in a smaller group. And with the Adobe Connect that Marines use, we have the ability to do breakout rooms from our attendees list up here. I actually have to switch it to be our breakout room view, but I can have up to 20 breakouts. Now, what happens with those breakouts is audio, video, and activity divide out. Now, through the use of templates, all of this can be set up in advance to where when I come in, I just either divide my students up or I let my students pick the breakout room that they want to go to. There's new options within Adobe Connect where you can actually select and have people pick the room they want to go to. But once you start a breakout, audio, video, and activities divide out. So I can say, hey, everyone, you're going to go into your breakout rooms and I'm going to give you this prompt. Work on this prompt. Now, it could just be reviewing a document and they'll come back and give a summary to the rest of the class. What I like, and actually something I thought was really interesting that I saw someone else do, is they basically, to show an example of breakout rooms and icebreakers, they told people, hey, I'm going to give you a whiteboard. I want you to whiteboard out how you think pizza was invented. Using the tools, using their creativity, they whiteboarded out this activity where they told the story of the invention of pizza. So with that, that's what, imagine these boxes is that going on in this room here. Now, as the instructor, I have the free range to move throughout my breakout rooms because I want to see how everyone's progressing. They're all doing this small group work. So when I go down to these other breakout rooms, I'm going to see what they're working on. Now, this group hasn't started anything. Let's see. Group 3 hasn't started anything, and group 4, wow, group 4, they have a completely different activity. All of this is happening simultaneously within the room. Now, the thing that I also like about this, and I kind of talked about flipping the classroom on its head and making students the instructors, is once I end a breakout activity, I don't lose any of that content. So I might switch us up and go more into our presentation area, and I'll hide my presentation for right now, and I'll hide a few of these other things here. As you can see, this is the magic behind some of my templates. An element that I like is that I like motion. So when something changes in the room, when the new activity comes in, I like that to be the center of the motion. So that's where people's eyes are drawn. But back to breakout rooms, is you can go into your breakout room. So I can say, all right, let's pull in group 1's whiteboard. I'll load in that whiteboard, and then I'll promote one of those students in the classroom to be either a presenter or give them speaking rights, and then let them go through that activity with the rest of the students. So again, it allows me to divide everyone out so they have this small group discussion, but it also allows me to have the ability to take that small group discussion and bring it back as the whole class. So then we can go over it together and review it together. And again, that's ultimately going to create engagement because you're putting them into that smaller group, giving them the tools that they can then come up with this activity story that they're then going to present. But I'll throw it to you, Erica, because I know you guys do breakout rooms a lot. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
So the only thing I would share is that a lot of times what our designers have designed are they'll make however many breakout rooms the same. So 3 breakout rooms that's the exact same, so that you can, if they've got 15 students, they're going to have 5 students in each breakout room, and they're all doing the same activity. They'll put like a timer in there, but the timers are synced, because you can do that. You can have certain pods synced. And then the instructor can message, you got 2 minutes left, finish up your activity. But that way they're all working on it, and then they come back, and then as Dan showed, you can pull up each working group's product separately and ask them to present. So again, this is something you would do in a classroom, right? You would, like in a physical classroom, you would break them out, but it's capability of this. Again, this is something that the average adjunct faculty wouldn't have time to develop, because it is a little back end work to set this up ahead, just like it would be in a classroom, you know, getting all the supplies and ready. But having the templates, this can be pre-loaded, and then makes it absolutely engaging. And how are they engaging? They're engaging by drawing on something. And I think maybe, Dan, if I go to my slides again, there might be a picture where I have not on this one, but the next one.
While you're looking, Erica, let me just give you another play on how to do the breakout rooms. If you can come up with, depending on how many groups you actually have, a different sort of assignment for each one, so that, because if you have them all doing exactly the same thing each time, yes, they learn, but by the time you get to the 3rd or the 4th group, it's redundant. Right. And the 3rd or the 4th group begin to feel like they're, not useful.
Repeating, right?
Yeah, exactly. But if you can have each one do something a little bit different, and then they can put it together, that way they really begin to learn from each other, and that expands what they're trying to do. And it's just a cut on how to do the instructional design for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess this was kind of what I had talked about. There's clocks and timers to make it interactive. We have videos that are embedded. So again, the instructor doesn't have to go and search for where was this video that the course director wanted me to show, preloaded. And then items for discussion are there. The videos, if somebody's having a connectivity issue, because remember, we're deploying this to Marines around the world. Sometimes when they're in Africa, the reception isn't as great, but they can download that video and still watch it and participate, and maybe see the video piece later, or during. Maybe it's just being the fact that it was broadcast wasn't working for them. But we have all of these things loaded ahead of time with the thought that the instructor themselves, the adjunct faculty, may not have thought of, but we've had the time to sit here and try to game through all this, what could possibly happen, what would help this, and we have them, ready to go. That's just an up close view. This is just, some custom pods that we can pull in. There's randomizer, for selecting things, not just games, right? There's other useful tools with teaching. And then here's another one with demonstration and application. We have a naval letter format, and we ask the Marines to edit it, because that was an important piece in PME, and they can engage in that. You can ask when they go into those breakout rooms, they can write over the top. And to Carla's point, we could have 3 or 4, each of them have a different document to edit, and then they share what things they found wrong in their own document, and they're, make them something different, because this is also something that they do in the face-to-face classroom. It isn't stopped, or it isn't excluded, because they're in the virtual classroom. And then also that peer-to-peer feedback. Yeah.
I think that's a really important part to mention and really kind of emphasize, is the fact that what they're used to doing in a classroom experience and being able to replicate that in a virtual experience is huge. We look at the average age of the typical government employee, and we'll just say that in my experience, I spent a lot of time in a physical classroom. So that's where my comfort level is, right? And so if I'm able to help move that user experience into a virtual environment and be able to replicate some of the things that I'm already familiar with, to Daniel's point, as far as with the breakout rooms and so forth, I've spent a lot of times in different classes where they're like, the instructor says, go to the four corners of the room. You guys do what you do. We're all going to come back. And then a leader from each of those groups is going to present what they found. Right. And that's very similar to what Daniel's point or example was, is how a pizza was made. Right. Is that everyone go to the four corners, do that. So if I'm able to make that user experience easier for the learners, again, we're really kind of making more time for them to absorb the information that you as the instructor are trying to convey.
Yeah.
And I'd add to that too, you want to replicate as much as you can so that they're comfortable with it, so they can take their skills from in-person classroom to the virtual classroom, but then build into the templates things that they wouldn't even known to ask for or think about, that they'll get to those layouts and that part of the template and go, oh, I can do this because this is online. This is cool. This expands what I could do, maybe with some helps to show them, how they would accomplish it, but expand out beyond just replicating the physical classroom, so we can do so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and to that point, that's the example with this one is these pens. Like I don't have my, this is obviously just an image of it. And I know we're running short on time and I do want people to be able to ask questions. So I'm going to kind of speed through it, but if you click on that pen, those students who are in this breakout session can write over the top of this, and then it can be exported. So just different things. This one is an example of, this is a warfighting scenario. Here's a map. They could enlarge that map by clicking on that button, and then now they get to, hey, where would you put your troops in this? Where would they move? And they're basing it on the scenario. They're talking within their group. If they want to download the document to look at it, if they enlarge the map, they can, lots of different things already in place. They're taking notes over here, something maybe that they have to when they present to their instructor, all these different features of how to engage, which I'm going to go back to an adjunct faculty who we haven't had the time to teach them that. We've created that in a template to make it engaging, these, and I will I'll turn it over to you, Dan, for this one too.
Yeah,
right?
you don't have to stop sharing. I'll just kind of bring this up because I know we're short on time. Another key important thing is just accessibility, especially nowadays where we're doing a lot of hybrid or virtual. We're going to be training people of all different types, and you want to make sure that your trainings can be seen by anyone, essentially. Through this platform in particular, they've definitely done a lot to update it to make it more modern and more accessible for different users. So of course, it's going to work with screen readers. So if you do need any sort of visual accessibility, it'll work with your JAWS screen reader so people can navigate through the platform if they do need that additional help. But the other thing that they've actually added into it, and something that I like, I'm one of those people that I don't need them, but I always have closed captioning on my TV shows. If you do as well, feel free to tell me in the chat. I'm always curious to who my people are that are like, yeah, I don't need closed captioning. It helps me focus. There's automated closed captioning here. So if I was to turn on my microphone, what would happen is it would start captioning out everything that I'm saying in the cloud and then bring it into the room. So now, if I do want people to have the ability to hear me if they have any sort of hearing impairment, they can use closed captioning. The other nice thing about that is just having assets afterwards. That allows me to also download an entire transcript of the meeting. So I now have a hard copy of everything that was said, and I can use that as a repeatable asset or as a reference material for people who might have missed that meeting. So there are a lot of different areas of accessibility in this room, not only from visual impairments, hearing impairments, but also mobility impairments. There are plenty of keyboard shortcuts that also work within the room. So it is accessible. It is 508 compliant, and something I really like. I love closed captioning, so I'll kind of throw it back to you, Erika.
All right. So my big thing for summary of what to include: engagement, obviously, right? Engagement, encourage engagement. And if you notice, very few of our layouts required the camera feature, because you don't. If you want to make sure your students are engaged, you don't have to see their face. And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people. to get past. So unlike when you're in the face-to-face classroom, yes, you can see your students interacting, you can see how they're interacting, but you can watch that virtually as well. Are they participating in the chat? Are they the ones drawing? Are they the ones typing in the notes? So there can be interactivity with hands-on virtual participation. So that's my big push. You don't have to have a camera, and I think that's a hard one to accept. Overall, the outcome, we standardized the layouts to make sure that they were appropriate and effective design, right? Because we didn't want something that was confusing and distracting and didn't center focus for the student learner. We want to make sure that we used the adult learning theories to reach them. We want to make sure that the material was consistent and that there were holes or the faculty was missing something or they couldn't find the product that they needed. It's all there. They didn't have to search. And then making it fast and easy. We didn't have to take separate time to train each one of them. We had to teach them the basics, but we didn't have to teach them how to develop it. The developing was done. And all of this was done within the ability to still allow them to make it their own classroom. They could still personalize their room. They can still change the layouts. The layouts are not locked. I'll add that. The layouts are not locked. So they can still add to it and they can add additional layouts if they wanted to. So maybe they're a creative person and had some time on their hands. They were still allowed to do that. And that is it. Questions?
Excellent.
Or comments?
Thank you so much, Erika. One of the things I did want to say, though, when you put all this effort into the instructional design and you're not having to teach the teachers how to do it, but they're actually learning by osmosis because you put them in front of it, they're administering it, and so they do learn it. And so you're enhancing their education and their professionalism simply because you've gone above and beyond as instructional designers to give them tools with which they are not familiar. But by the time you get through with them, they are, and they can do more. So, you
And I would say
about it that way. Yeah.
And I would say that's kind of what we've seen. So like I said, if we have some of those instructors who have taught a couple of sessions and have begun to learn the tools, they can add to it. There's nothing saying they can't. I guess that's a huge win too.
Okay, there's a couple of questions, or here's one in the chat from Donna. Can an instructor use a template and still add their own PowerPoint or change interactivity, or is it all or nothing? So you've sort of answered that, but How much can they add?
Anything. It's not limited. They can add files for the students to download. The students can even add files when they're in a breakout room. They can add their own files that can be downloaded. The instructor can give students permission to put files in to be downloaded. As far as a presentation, you can pull up additional pods to share. Students could share a screen. The instructor could share their screen. They could share PowerPoints. They can share PDFs. Yeah, it's not limited.
Okay, Sana, I'm not saying your name wrong. I'm so sorry. She says you've started using Adobe Connect templates for some of our courses, and they would love them. It really makes them so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to do that. Other questions? Okay.
Yeah, well, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, another thing I wanted to add to Donna's question and Erika's answer is just the personalization. Again, as an instructor, sometimes you want to make your room feel more comfortable to you, and having that ability to add a little level of your own personalization in there, like uploading pictures. So if you don't want to be on webcam, you can upload a picture, or if you have an animal that people might find that would like, you can always do that. I have
rent out your cat.
Yeah, I used to have a webcam on the bird feeder that I had on my windows, but we have weekly meetings sometimes in Adobe Connect, and a person that we work with works with horses as a hobby, and she will always share pictures of her either riding horses or horses in the stable. And even just that level of personalization and that personal touch to that room just makes it seem so much more inviting. So just that ability to kind of expand on it is so great.
Yeah.
Well, it really is. Well, I want to thank you all, Erika, Daniel, Charlie, Paul, Rob. Thank you all for being here today. The webinar was outstanding, and I think really valuable information about how to work along these lines and change some things up so that you've got something really special by the time you're finished. We want to thank all of you for attending today. And thanks to our sponsors, COSO Cloud, Zoom, and Moodle for working with us in so many ways. We'll see you on July 17th at 2 p.m. when Dr. Anders Ronstadt will take us through some of the virtual instructional strategies used by the Navy to train submariners. That concludes the webinar. Thank you for being here today. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Excellent. Really interesting thing.